Hello, welcome to Books and Brews,
the place where beer and literature meet.
With your host, the seer of the beer, Chris Powell.
And Laura Vosica, author of the Bluebells Chronicles.
Each month, we invite a guest author to read their works and talk about writing while sipping a beer specially paired to their work. Today's guest is Michael Modzelewski. So sit back,
pop a cold one,
and dive into some books
and brew. Welcome to episode number 72 of Books and Brews. So, Laura, what have you been doing this month other than getting trampled by your opposition?
I was trampled by my opposition, who happened to be a ram, a sheep that I believe probably weighs between 175 and 200 pounds. And I guess he knew where he was headed, that the field trip to the slaughterhouse was a little more than a field trip. And I accidentally panicked him. We were trying to load 3 of the male sheep into our trailer. And so we had built a chute, and I was holding up the metal garden gate that we had taken off so that they could get through. And I was holding it, trying to walk steadily forward, and he panicked, and he ran straight at me. I thought I didn't even know what happened, but I landed flat on my back with this gate on top of me, and our farmhand said he literally just ran right over me from foot to head and beyond. And amazingly, apart from I've got a few scratches, like I've got a really long one here, and I've got some little scratches on my hands, but I think I was extremely lucky.
Well, and in the end, I don't think he won, did he?
I don't think so. Nope, they're all at the slaughterhouse. And the very strange irony of that is we also got a dog this week, and it just so happens that this dog, when I went to the place where he lived, was directly across from the slaughterhouse, or I'm sorry, the meat processing plant. Sounds so much better, doesn't it?
And in fact, he'd gotten into a bit of a stir there, didn't he?
Yeah, so probably the reason we have him is because they lived across from the meat processing plant, and this is a Great Pyrenees, so it's a big dog. And they had tried to hold him in with like a little fence, like maybe 3 feet tall. And this dog just flattened it, went back to the meat processing plant and got into all the tasty bones. And so they ended up having to chain this dog up. And I think they just knew, we're kind of stuck. We can't build the fence he needs, and we can't leave this poor dog just chained up for his life. So just by a very bizarre coincidence, I was right back at that meat processing plant, or rather across the street a few days later, picking up the dog that had the issue with the processing plant, or they with the dog. So,
and now we have 2 ginormous guardian dogs.
Yes.
Have you been reading anything, Laura?
So I have. In fact, I have read 2 of the 3 books. The third one isn't written yet, by Aaron Ryan, who is a previous guest on Books and Brews. So it's sort of, I think it's fair to say it's kind of end times fiction, and so it's the end Alpha and the end Omicron. I'm assuming that the last book of the trilogy is end Omega. And on my list to read is somebody that I hope will be a guest. His name is John Anthony Miller, and his book that he sent me very kindly is called In Satan's Shadow, and it's about, I believe it's a string quartet. But because I'm a musician, I'm excited to read. You don't actually see a lot of books about musicians, like fiction. So my books include musicians, obviously, and so I'm excited to read John's book, too. How about you?
Well, aside from some books on graph theory and quantum computing, I did get to spend a decent amount of time reading piano literature. I've been playing some Haydn and Handel and Scarlatti recently, so that's really what I've been focused on reading. I'm about to channel the great Karnak and thinking that we probably have a very interesting guest this month, Laura. Who could it be?
We always do, because every time I say to a guest, are you an exciting, interesting guest? And they say, no, I'm kind of dull. I say, well, I guess we won't have you on then. So this is kind of a rigged system. It's not just dumb luck. And I'm always excited. So today we have Mike Mojo-less-key, and I was so excited that I realized spelling your name is actually really easy. And then just today I looked and realized that's because I've been spelling it wrong. So, but I pronounced it right because you gave me the pronunciation. So, Michael grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, the son of a famous NFL football player with the Cleveland Browns named Ed Big Mo Modzelewski. Michael graduated from Indiana University with a degree in English literature, and he is now the author of 5 books, including Inside Passage, about a 2-year stay on a wilderness island in the Inside Passage to Alaska. After living dateless, that's date-less, on the wild island, Michael was chosen a Bachelor of the Month by Cosmopolitan Magazine. Mr. November received 5,000 letters from women around the world, dated many, and that's how he met his amazing wife. His resultant book, Wildlife, The Miss, M-I-S-S, Adventures of a Cosmo Bachelor, twice landed him as a featured guest on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Mojo's latest book, his first novel, A Long Way From Home, is set in Namibia, Southern Africa, and it is about a famous lost Hollywood actor who learns the meaning of life from a native African girl. So, welcome, Mike. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Chris. It's an honor to be with you guys. I love your show.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, and a lot of people tend to be amazed at all the things he and I do, and that was even before I, bested a trampling ram. So it's always fun to meet somebody who makes my life look kind of boring.
How did you two meet each other?
Online,
Did you?
originally.
Who wrote to
Uh-huh.
whom first? Do you remember?
I think you contacted me first.
Yes, and then she replied.
Yep.
Besides
And
being lovely, what was in her bio that caught your eye?
Oh, it was, let's see, it was something in Streaming Banners.
oh, did I talk about
Yes,
streaming
you did.
banners? Okay.
Yeah, and it was her books. She wrote this wonderful series of books, time travel set in medieval Scotland in the present day. And as I, like to tell people, and it's totally true, I love the book so much I married the author, and it's very much a story. And I got to help her
Did
edit
you
her
click
fourth
right
book.
away when you first met?
I think so, yeah.
Yes.
We clicked so well that I was afraid I was going to get a parking ticket because I was, an hour and a half, 2 hours over my limit, and
On our first date.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So I'd say we clicked. We both play trombone and we both play organ, and
And she got kicked out of
I
organ
did,
lessons as a child.
and he thinks I can't say the word because I don't
She
use
got
that
kicked out.
language.
She looked so
I
angelic.
did.
A
And I
tr-
thought that
Yeah.
was extra hot. I play pipe organ in church myself. And, representing the pipe organ community, you don't get kicked out. It just doesn't happen. There are so few of us that, it just put her to another level, as far
what
as
pray
that.
tell did you do to get kicked out?
Really nothing. I just didn't like organ lessons. I didn't like the teacher, and she didn't like me. And she told my mother I was the most stubborn student she had had in 25 years. And I was actually pretty good at it. In second grade, I got up there. I think I played Tom Dooley from memory, and I got to cross my hands onto the opposite manuals. So I was pretty darn good.
That's all by
But
itself. So, yeah.
she said I was her most stubborn student ever, and the irony is that I actually ended up teaching music lessons myself. So I always told my students, you're not going to out-stubborn me. I have the official certification. Plus, I also told them my family lives to be very old, so you may as well learn this now, because when you're 92, I will still be alive.
Oh,
I will still be telling you to play that scale correctly.
Still making you practice.
That's right.
have you written about that?
About being kicked out of organ lessons?
Yeah, that'd be a great story.
I I have not, but we did compile a list of all the things I've been kicked out of, including 11th grade English. And it's actually kind of funny because I have lived such a straight and narrow life. Like, I'm not a troublemaker. I never smoked, never drank in high school, really not even in college. Didn't do drugs, you know. I lived such a straight and narrow life, and yet I've got this long list of things I've been kicked out of, and always for good reasons. Like I was in 10th grade, and I took the 11th grade English class, and they caught me, and that's why they kicked me out.
Oh,
and made me go take the 10th grade, which I had taken the previous year at my private high school before I transferred. So, like I said, I always get kicked out, usually for pretty good reasons, but it's just ironic that I do keep getting kicked out of things. I got kicked out of a Protestant church. It was so funny. I went to see if I wanted to play in their orchestra, and it was one of these where they're all waving their hands and shouting hallelujah. And my daughter was 2 at the time, and so she copied them. She's going, ah, pretending, thinking she's saying hallelujah. And she kept going longer than they did. And the pastor said, I have important things to say. If your child is making noise, you need to leave. And he looked right at me.
whoa.
And so I've been kicked out of church. I've been kicked out of the youth symphony. So the
But I
list,
haven't kicked her out of my life, and I don't plan on it. So
right, thank you. I appreciate
Sensing a
that.
free
Well,
spirit or a nonconformist in you. Is that true?
I'd say that's definitely true. I'm a huge fan of following rules if they make sense. But when I start having problems is if it's a stupid rule, don't expect me to do a stupid thing. I'm not going to. So,
I'd like
Well,
to make our first drink if I could.
first
Laura,
drink,
it's
what is
people
it?
like you that move society ahead. Like Steve Jobs once had that great quote about the Mavericks and the troublemakers. And they're the ones that advance society, not everybody that
Yep.
follows the stupid rules.
Right. I think there's a lot of truth to that. And people who follow stupid rules, that's where we can get into trouble with authoritarian societies. Drink one.
Yes, so I was inspired in your first reading by your adventures with the orcas, and so I have a cocktail here called the Killer Whale, which I think is going to be especially fun. We have in the shaker right at the moment. We have some vodka. We have some light rum. We have some Chambord, which is a nice black raspberry liqueur. Triple sec to brought a little bit of sweetness. Some cranberry juice, orange juice, and I'm going to add some ice to get that all mixed up. And then I'm going to put that in a highball glass with some ice and fill it with some 7-Up. Actually, it's a neat mix, I think, of tastes. And, I'm not sure why they call it the Killer Whale, but, other than that, it's certainly a fun summery cocktail. I'm not sure if it's warm where you are, but it is a nice warm day here
I
today.
think you're in Florida right now, aren't you?
Yeah. So is that the actual name of the drink, the Killer Whale?
Oh, yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
yes.
My goodness.
Perfect, right?
Yeah.
So I was hoping every once in a while he's found drinks where the layers of alcohol are different, would you call it weights or heaviness?
Yeah, viscosities, right.
And so you'll get layers of color. And so I was hoping he would find something that gave us layers of color, but not this time. But it is called the Killer Whale.
Wow.
And so here we have it. I've topped it off with some 7-Up. There you go.
Okay,
And we have our Killer Whale.
cheers.
Oh my. And it's in a pint glass too. That's great.
Go ahead with reading number 1, and our audience will quickly see why he chose Killer Whale.
Right.
So this is from my first book, Inside Passage, and I got very lucky. It was sold to HarperCollins in New York, and then PBS Television also filmed it. I had to play myself living in the wilderness, so that was an
Oh,
experience.
that's so cool.
So here comes the killer whale. My experience with the killer whales were like climbing a ladder, only the whales arranged the rungs. Once they accepted me into their midst, I slowly got closer. By degrees, they revealed more and more of themselves to me. Culmination came when I was out in a small dinghy, rowing life into stagnant muscles. I settled into an even rhythm, watching the house, the cabin shrink away, savoring the calm mental state created by physical exertion. Suddenly, a tremendous splash drowned my meditation. I spun around on the skiff seat and saw a killer whale, a big bull, 50 yards away at the 9 o'clock position. Then a younger male spouted at 10 o'clock, and then a female rolled up straight off the bow. From the way she raised her head before she went under, I sensed she was coming straight for me. I pulled in the oars, waiting, my heart thumping in my ears. The whale rose up a few feet away. I looked into a lucid blue eye. She spouted, and I breathed her breath. There was a mere inch or two between her side and the edge of the skiff. My hand, on its own, went out. I touched her on the back behind the towering fin. The flesh quivered. Her back wheeled under my fingertips, her skin like supple satin. I came to, back in the cabin, sitting at the round table, not remembering rowing in. So absorbed was I in the direct contact with the whale that permeated my consciousness. I touched the whale, she touched me, and what passed between us changed me forever. Later that night, I read
That's
from Ortega y Gasset. So many things fail to interest us simply because they don't find in us enough surfaces on which to live. And what we have to do then is to increase the number of planes in our mind so that a much larger number of themes can find a place in it at the same time. The killer whales inspired me to expand my planes and points of intersection. After observing them, I wanted to seek out and employ all inherent powers. Occasionally, my fingertips tingle with wild energy. It leads me on.
very nice. I love that.
That's an amazing story. No, I am curious. Are you set out to get close to these whales? Is that correct?
Well, I always went out on the water, and the body of water in front of the island I lived on was called Blackfish Sound. And Blackfish
Hmm.
is the native nickname for the killer whale. And actually,
Okay.
it's been proven that the killer whale is not really a whale, it's the largest and most intelligent dolphin. So it's actually more accurate to call them now Orca after their Latin classification name, Orcinius orca. But
Okay.
however we call them, however they are named, when you look into their eyes are about as big as our fists together,
Wow.
lucid blue. You look into a
Hmm.
shark's eye and it's kind of like a doll's eye. I don't know if you remember the movie Jaws with Robert Shaw that played the old crusty cat.
Yes.
And then they're
Yes.
in the cabin in a lull in the movie and the action, and they're comparing war wounds and all that. And he nailed it. He said, "A shark's got doll's eyes. You don't think it's alive until it bites you." But an orca, killer whale, when you make eye contact, they are opening every drawer in your soul, and they could probably tell you what you had for breakfast 20 years ago.
Wow. Our dog died in on January 6th. She was almost 11 years old. She
Oh,
was an Irish Wolfhound, and they only live 6 to 8 years. So we really were very fortunate to have her that long. But she had, I would say, similar about her eyes. It always felt like looking into a human being's eyes, not a dog's eyes, because there was such depth in them and such soul. So that's really neat to hear that about orcas. So I was going to ask, did you also want to get close to other animals? But it sounds like it was more a circumstance that you ended up surrounded by orcas.
yeah. And when I was there in the wilderness, primarily in isolation for 2 years, all of your senses sharpen because you're drinking pure water, you're breathing pure air. Everything is coming at you in a pure way, non stressful way. As musicians say, which you guys probably know better than most, you play the center of the note. You're not
Mm-hmm.
behind reality or rushing ahead of it. You are in the moment, entirely in the
Mm-hmm.
center of each moment. You slow down. And when you vibrate on a higher level with all that purity around you, animals start connecting with you on a non-rational way, but to the native people, it's perfectly normal. So the book
Mm-hmm.
is full of experiences with eagles and eating blackberries with a black bear. We shared the same bush, and he allowed me to,
You and the black bear.
as long as I went blackberry to pot or mouth, because I ate more than I put in the pot, he was fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if you stuck your hand in your pocket, he'd stand up on his hind legs and give you the woof woof and clack his teeth, thinking you were hiding
Really?
something, maybe a gun. And it was like, hey,
How
buddy,
funny.
I don't know what animal you are, but you're standing on two legs. You could be as
Mm-hmm.
big as a small bear, and there's enough
Mm-hmm.
here for both of us. So, how cool was that to share a berry bush with a black bear in a nonviolent way?
Right. We went to the North American Bear Center in Ely, Minnesota when we still lived up there. We're in Tennessee now. And Lynn Rogers is an amazing man. I think he must be in his mid to late 80s by now.
Yes.
And they were saying he spent his life studying bears, and he was scared of them to begin with. But as a relatively young man, he realized he really is going to have to just walk among them. And he's built up this entire museum, made movies about them, and learned that they're not aggressive and mostly just want to be left alone. And he ended up actually getting enough trust from them that he was able to put a webcam inside one of the
Wow.
bears' dens. And then they were able to live stream the birth of a cub, which had never been done before.
Wow.
And he did it basically using the same methods, I guess, that you did, just
Right.
being there and not threatening them.
You
So
guys
I am
are
curious.
you from Ely or did you live there for a while?
No, no, we lived in Duluth just before we left Minnesota. We
I've spent so
left.
much time in Ely paddling the Quetico, an
Really?
international wolf center there.
Yes,
Joined the Polar
yes.
Bear Club where I should have known better. It was December. They cut a coffin hole in the lake ice. Guy had six
Uh-huh.
parkas on and he's stirring the surface with an oar to keep the crystals from refreezing. We sat in the sauna, cranked it up to 120 degrees, ran down the snowbank and jumped in that black water. Woo-hoo-hoo.
My son did that, and I don't know if he did it on a warm day or what. Well, one of my sons, but he ended up saying it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that cold, so maybe he did it on a warmer day.
After the second or third time, it does trick your nerves going from heat to cold. And
I
we were
bet.
buck naked and we are making snow angels in the snow after the third pass. Maybe we had a killer whale to drink beforehand, I think.
What prompted you to walk away from society for 2 years?
Well, I went to IU, as you mentioned, and I studied journalism, English lit. I was a freelance writer. I would write for New York Times, LA Times, but then I wouldn't have another assignment for 6 weeks and I'd starve to death, living on top
Mm-hmm.
ramen and peanut butter. Every writer goes through that where you're a freelance, at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, you know what? It's time to write my first book, something I can put my heart into. Be careful what you ask for, you just might get it. I ended up on that wilderness island for 2 years, almost died 5 times a day. It's not an adventure unless something goes wrong, and that it did every day.
Yeah.
But high
So
risk,
it
Sounds like
was
high
an
farming.
yield.
adventure.
By dropping out of
Right.
society and rolling the dice, high risk, high yield, and everything exploded after I took that dare, took that chance.
Did you go there intending to write the book? Or
Yeah,
just.
so I would take notes because, in the evening it gets dark so early, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the sun doesn't come up till 10 a.m. So you have plenty of time ringed in the buttery glow of the kerosene lamps to take notes and, write letters that would not get mailed about 6 weeks later when a passing fishing boat was coming by. But all my friends saved my letters. And when I stacked them up chronologically, because, when you write a letter, you're in the immediacy of the moment.
Yep.
And when I put those letters together by date, I pretty much had a first draft.
I'm curious, you talk about this animal changing you forever, and you talk about the intersection of points and planes. How did it change you, and what is this about intersections of points and planes?
Well, I feel so lucky to have had that experience living in solitude, being close to nature and native people with all their wisdom. Because Socrates gave us two words of advice that are kind of key, I found in life as I've gone along. And he said, know thyself. And I really believe we can't love anybody out here unless we first learn to love the person in our skin and get that
Mm-hmm.
self knowledge and work on yourself. I was able during those 2 years to grow a soul and to match it
Mm-hmm.
up with all that influence of animals and the wisdom of native people. And life is so busy. It comes at us so fast. Mortgage comes, kids come, and I was able to have that period where I didn't have any responsibilities other than to read, to write, to commune with nature. And I just wish that everybody could take that moment. Maybe 2 years is a long time, but maybe a month or two where you could go and retreat, get to know yourself.
I very much believe in that because I grew up as a Boy Scout, and we frequently had many opportunities to be, year-round camper for 7 years in a row and things. And you learn a tremendous amount about yourself when it's 10 below zero, and you got to get up. You got to get breakfast, you got to get things working for the day, and even though it was only, let's say, a weekend or a week at a time, it was a tremendous advantage in my life that I got to do that kind of stuff at that time. And then I did get a chance. I worked at scout camp, so all summer long I was immersed in the woods and learning everything about it, and it just became, it's a very significant part of my life.
Wow,
So I understand that.
that is so wonderful, Chris. I'm so glad you had that. Because I
Yes,
really
thank
believe,
you.
guys, that we attract what we are. We direct the movie from within, and whatever
Mm-hmm.
level we have attained in personal growth, that's the level and that's the reality that comes to us, whether it's finding a spouse or success in life. But it all comes from within.
Yep, 100%. And I think too few people realize that if you want this, let's say, I don't know, if you want this high-powered career woman for a wife, you can't sit on the couch and eat chips and expect she's going to find you appealing. She's going to look for someone like herself, which sort of brings us to, I believe, your next reading. What is our second drink for this reading?
Well, this may sound like it came from Captain Obvious, but given Cosmopolitan Magazine and all of the relationship to that, I had to, of course, make a true cosmopolitan. Many people, of course, in a bar will think that a Cosmo is just like vodka cranberry or something like that. But the original Cosmopolitan recipe has a bit more to it. So I'm going to have a bit more fun with this one. I'm going to start out with some ice in a shaker. This one of my favorite drinks. Any drink I make, if I get to serve it in a martini glass, is always fantastic. And this one we get to do that. So we're going to start off with, because it's a martini, a decent amount of vodka citron. We're just going to get a little bit of a, citrusy feel to it. Then we're going to add cranberry, of course, because we still have to have that. Then we're going to use some Cointreau. And this is an interesting liqueur. It's kind of an orange liqueur, and it's going to give it I think, a very continental flavor in addition to the vodka. And, of course,
Beautiful color.
some lime juice.
I thought so. That's why I wanted to hold it up.
We have our drink made. I'll shake it up here. And then, of course, we just strain it into the martini glass. So we get a good, wonderful perspective on Cosmopolitan Magazine
You
and
notice
its
how he
choice
just
in you.
keeps pouring and pouring more for me?
Oh my God, does that
Cheers,
look
Laura.
tasty?
Cheers. It's a beautiful color,
I'm
isn't it?
pressing my nose against the screen.
Can you smell it? Whoops. I
Yeah,
almost
it
spilled it
looks
on my
it looks
keyboard.
divine. I love the color too.
And I think the Cointreau really does a neat job, enhancing the flavor of
I
this
find
as
it a
well.
little bit bitter.
A little bit bitter, okay.
Yeah, yeah, tart. Maybe tart's a better word.
Well, the vodka citron and the cranberry will provide a bit of that, plus the lime juice. And so the Cosmopolitan is actually a member of the gimlet family of cocktails. So it's related to like a vodka lime type of a thing, which happened to be the favorite cocktail of my now deceased father. And I didn't know this until many years later. It became my favorite cocktail, and then my mother said, "Did you happen to know that was your father's favorite cocktail?" And I just thought that was a neat turn,
A
to learn
genetic
about that.
disposition. Wow.
Yes.
Right. Well, I can tell you, somebody asked us once, one of our guests, do we ever start to get a little tipsy? And I pointed out that I'm not necessarily going to drink the whole thing like this one. I'm not going to drink the rest of that. So some of these I'm not too crazy about.
Plus, unbeknownst to our guest, we have the camera on a Steadicam apparatus, so just in case we get tipsy, it's not us.
We have a sober filter on so that we always appear sober. I have to say once, he makes me laugh quite a bit, and apparently I make him laugh too. So one day we were laughing so hard, tears were streaming down our eyes, and his daughter said, "Have you two been drinking?" And we had not touched a drop, so it could just
just the
Yes.
humor of the moment, right?
Yeah. So go ahead with reading number 2.
Well, just to preface real quick, when I lived on the island for 2 years, I didn't have a date during that entire time. And loneliness to me comes when you experience something beautiful, and Alaska is full of that. Northern lights, whales jumping, phosphorescent in the ocean, and there's nobody next to you to wrap your arms around and both of you jump up and down in a shared moment.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that beauty contained in one person, I was howling at the moon with loneliness. And in
Mm-hmm.
Alaska, out in the wilderness, there are 10 men for every one female. And it's interesting, the Alaska females have a saying about that. The odds are good, but the goods are odd.
I love that quote in your reading. I got a real chuckle out of that.
But I
So
have
I
to
had
say,
I had no
different.
dates for 2 years.
Yeah.
As a young guy, I was 28 years old when I first went, and I was just so alone. And then I put this book together, and it sold to HarperCollins without an agent. My editor
Wow.
pulled it out of a slush pile that probably was as big as Mount Everest. And he said,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, this is a Polish name like mine. I'm going to have a sandwich and give it a chance." First page.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, HarperCollins decided to publish it. So I came back, and my editor there was having lunch one day with Helen Gurley Brown, who took a bankrupt
Mm-hmm.
magazine called Cosmopolitan and put it in 100 countries around the world and 87 languages. And Cosmo kind of became a trademark like Coca-Cola or
Mm-hmm.
other, companies that we know well. And every month they choose a single guy called the Bachelor of the Month. They put him in there, match him up with the month, and put an address or email that women can write to. My God, the Good Housekeeping seal of approval. And I happen to have a picture of a sled dog kissing my cheek. So if the dog likes you, you're halfway home, right? With the ladies.
That's excellent.
And the letters rolled in from Mongolia, South Africa, it was every man's fantasy. So I went from famine to feast. And when I
Mm-hmm.
was going through the experiences of dating these Cosmo girls that are very frisky and adventurous, my literary agent at the time, I finally picked up an agent. He said, "Michael, my God, man, Sigmund Freud once asked, what do women really want? You have a chance to find out. Take notes." So I did, and it turned into a book. So
Another book.
the
Go
very
ahead.
first, the very first page of the preface, dear reader, imagine a dream in which the master of the universe says to a young man, "Here is a female candy store. Walk in, the door is open. Enjoy as many different colored and flavored sweets as you want for as long as you want. The lids are off all the jars. Help yourself to all the goodies." Well, for this man, that dream came true in the boom boom 1990s when I was picked by Cosmopolitan Magazine as the Bachelor of the Month. I lived every man's fantasy, receiving thousands of letters from women around the world, frilly lingerie, naked pictures, a plethora of flower bouquets for myself, books, more mixtapes than I could count, and many invitations making it abundantly clear that if we met in person, there would be a happy ending on the first date right out of the gate. What human animal with a pair of testicles and a will to live could possibly say no? My literary agent at the time said, "My God, man, Sigmund Freud asked, what do women really want? You have a golden opportunity to find out. Whatever you do, take notes." I did, copiously. And the book you now hold in your hands, thank you, describes the wild sex, surreal hilarity, mystical guidance from an Alaska totem goddess, a black eye, and the deep wisdom I learned from an amazing assortment of what is the very best of this world, women. Buckle up, open your mind, and enjoy the ride.
I need to hear the story about the black eye.
Well, BBC in London, England was doing an interview, and I at first didn't want to do Cosmo because I wanted to be taken serious as a writer with my first book about the killer whales and eagle living the
Mm-hmm.
native people and a biologist. So I turned him down. And then my publicist at Harper got on the phone and chewed me out and said, "Michael, you can't just be a writer living on an island by yourself anymore. You got to sell books like they're boxes of soap. It's time to
Yep.
take off your writer's hat and put on your marketing hat. You cannot buy this kind of publicity. And Helen Burley Brown decided, alongside your picture in the caption, she's going to mention the title of your book. So, oh
Mhm.
my goodness, copies flew off the shelf. All these women out there knew me from reading the book, but I didn't know them. And
Mhm.
you could not make this up in fiction, because I got calls from prisoners in a correction institute in Florida that needed a
Mhm.
boyfriend bad, and they get out in a few months. Miss Memphis called me up and said, Michael, I just have to meet you. And I go, Kim, you don't even know me. She goes, I read your book. And I said, well, what if I'm a serial killer? She said, then I'll die happy.
Oh, jeez.
That's
Oh,
Like
fantastic.
I
I
was
love
losing
that.
my
who would say
sanity.
that attitude?
I wasn't
Right.
making any money. It was like eating tiramisu, every hour. I just was like, but I learned so much. And there's talk of making it in a movie, and the tagline would be a million different women, or love one woman a million different ways. And in my
I like
case,
that.
I was blessed to experience both, because what I learned from the million women, I now apply to my wife. And it's
That's
like
neat.
you couldn't go to the female university any better than what I was so blessed and lucky to experience.
Hmm. So, what did you conclude that women want?
Well, it's funny. We were on Oprah, and Oprah Winfrey, she has a way of cutting to the quick. And you're going out live to 400 million people. And you better,
Hmm.
and the producer came to our hotel room the night before in Chicago, and she said, okay, here's a list of questions that Oprah might ask you from. And of course, she tears up the script and she asks none of those. She catches you off guard. And she said,
Hmm.
Michael, you got 5,000 letters from women around the world. How'd you pick Paula? And I said, the reason,
That was on my list.
she didn't need me. Unlike the Rapunzel myth, so many of those letters came from small town America or places in the world saying, please come with your sled dogs from Alaska and whisk me out of my small town or my situation.
Hmm.
But Paula's letter was none of that. She was so successful in her own right. And my dad always told me, if you want to learn how to play tennis, don't play with somebody you beat all the time. Play with
Right.
somebody that runs your butt all over the court. And a lot
Hmm.
of men are intimidated by women that are powerhouses because maybe they want to dominate a female. But in my
Hmm.
case, I met an equal and then some. And it was so wonderful. So I happen to give that kind of an answer, as you guys understand, because I sense that same matchup. And Oprah invited us back because, it was a fresh take maybe from a male on the whole relationship thing.
Hmm. Did you conclude that there is any one thing that women as a rule want, or is, take me out of my small town what they seem to want?
Well, it's so easy, but it's so hard for men to do because they constantly want to be the alpha or dominate. If you just listen, and I mean listen with both ears and your heart wide open. And you don't have to problem solve like a lot of men say, okay, this is how you're going to fix this problem, bang bang boom, we're going to move on. Let's no,
Hmm.
just be
That's true.
there, be a,
Yes, it is.
and just listen instead of talking, and that just works wonders in our relationship.
That's
Hmm.
fantastic.
So, how long have you been married now?
Been married, we got married in the late 90s, so what is it, about 28 years, 30 years, but it
Something
feels
like
like
that, yeah.
2 days, because with Paula,
Isn't that wonderful?
it's as easy as breathing. We disagree, but I can't tell you the last time we had a fight. And sometimes I worry about that. I mean, should we, be in each other's face more? But no, it just,
Mhm.
we're like, I really got lucky and found my kindred spirit. So from a guy that didn't
That's
want to do Cosmo, there was a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow, finding a love
right.
partner that, so I'm
Yeah,
learning, even if something seems frivolous in the book world with marketing or whatever, do it,
hmm,
because you never know where it'll lead you.
right. Now, I have a question for you. We've talked primarily about your books and your adventure in Alaska, but you were raised by a professional NFL player, and how do you think that affects kids, for better or worse, to be raised by somebody who's so accomplished? Like, can it be intimidating, or did you find it more inspiring?
Well, I think overall it was very inspiring because my dad would come home and he was quite famous being a football player in Cleveland Browns. This is before they made the big bucks, though, back in the 60s,
Okay.
70s. So they played more for the love of the game rather than just chasing,
Mm-hmm.
which was a more genuine football game then, I think. And he would come home and he would say to his 4 children, the only 4-letter word I don't want to hear in this house is can't. You could do anything in life if you put your mind to it and you work hard enough. And he was this
Mm-hmm.
fountain of positivity. Like in second grade, you'd bring a stupid finger painting home, with a bunch of squiggles on it.
Yeah.
He would set his newspaper down. He would pick that up, and just like we talked about, listen with your ears and your heart. He would study
Mm-hmm.
that painting for like a minute and he would say, this is amazing. We're going to put this up on the wall of the refrigerator. And you would beam because that's all a child wants at that age is
Yeah.
father's attention or approval or love, not money, not gifts, just
Right.
the fact that your dad, who you see in the newspaper or on television playing football games, would give you his time and attention that way. And then I got
Mm-hmm.
balanced out because my dad was go, do anything in life. And then I have an Italian
Mm-hmm.
mother, and she was whoa. Because all mothers are protective, and I think Italian mothers even
Right.
more. And my mother, this was her philosophy in one line. It was, Michael, don't live, you might die. Ah, I worry
Okay,
from the
so
womb to the tomb. Ah.
I was raised with only sisters, and I ended up having 2 daughters and 7 sons.
Wow.
And oh my gosh,
I gave her a
boys,
third daughter.
he did.
I put her in double
Boys,
digits.
boys are so different. I was growing up in the '70s when it was all free to be you and me, and what was it, William has a doll or whatever, and they were telling us boys and girls are just the same. It's only that you guys raised them to be different. I think my son was probably 3 minutes old when I'm like, oh no, I did not raise him to be. Boys are just different. And they have such a wonderful energy. And I think in a way, because I played trombone, that was my main instrument, I had spent a lot of time with guys anyway.
Right.
And but boys have a wonderful energy and it's just different. But I was curious about the father, and I'm thinking that probably more of an answer would be, or to expound on what you said, I'm thinking it's more about the father himself than whether he's accomplished. Because my youngest son played football in like fifth, sixth grade, and his coach happened to be a former NFL coach.
Oh, wow.
And he was, yeah, well, oh wow, I'm not sure it was a good thing in the end, though. I mean, he was a good coach. He was a nice guy. I liked him. I liked his wife. But he was coaching because he wanted to coach his son's team. And this kid was always put in every game, and like clockwork, every game he, I'm going to use the air quotes, got injured, would be out there laying on the field, everybody around him, all the teams taking their knees, well, all 2 teams taking the knee. And then finally they'd help him up and help him off the field, and everybody would cheer. And even in fifth and sixth grade, these boys were going, isn't it funny that he gets injured every game? And they concluded, I think a lot of them did, that his dad wanted him playing football and he wasn't really that interested. And I don't know if that's the case or not, but it kind of seemed to be
See,
that his
what's
dad
fortunate
was.
for my father is he never said to us we had to be him. He said, I
Mhm.
don't care what you do in life, but promise me one thing, you'll be the best at it. If you want to be a
That's
ballerina,
good advice.
I want to see you on stage in New York. He just said,
Hmm.
take it to the absolute maximum. And it was so funny.
Right.
My dad was instrumental in my writing career starting because when I was a sophomore in college at IU, Indiana University, I wrote a story about my father losing his job to one of the best football players ever named Jim Brown. And they both played
Okay.
the same position. And when Jim Brown showed
Hmm.
up in the training camp, my dad said, whoa, this guy is going to break every record there is. He's Superman.
Hmm.
And I better go in the restaurant business because I recognize greatness. In fact, Jim Brown, in his autobiography on the last page, thanked Big Mo for not being
Oh, that's so neat.
but for whispering the plays to me and helping me adjust to Paul Brown's system where you couldn't be a dummy anymore. And he commended my dad for, instead of resenting him, helping him find his way that rookie year. So I wrote this story about that transition between the neighborhood boy taking his dad's number off his back and putting a new number on because somebody replaced his father. But my dad is the hero in the whole story. And I just, as a lark, I sent it off to Sports Illustrated magazine. And then about 2 weeks later, the deans of the English department, his secretary, came and pulled me out of class and said, "You have a phone call from Peter Carey, the editor of Sports Illustrated." And I go, "What?" Because I had forgotten about mailing it. And he said, "Mike, long story short, we're buying your story. Check will be in the mail."
That's
Big check
fantastic.
came from Time Life magazine. And I go, "Wow, this is easy being a writer. You make all this money." And then, yeah, as anybody knows, it's not all that easy, but it got me
Feast
started.
or famine.
Letters came from all over the world. But anyway, at Christmas time, I rolled it up. I didn't tell my dad about it. And I put it in his Christmas stocking. And when he stood there and read it next to me, it was the first time in my life I ever saw my father cry.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So that was my
That's
beginning as a
beautiful.
professional writer, having luck with Sports Illustrated that way.
That's fantastic.
Was that high school or college?
Sophomore in college.
Okay, that's amazing. We need to move on to drink number 3.
Alrighty.
No, I'm
This
curious
one,
what you could possibly come up with for the Africa story.
yes, well, so I had some fun searching for this one, and I was first inspired by the girl in the Baobab tree. My first introduction to that tree was in The Little Prince by Antoine Saint-Exupéry, when one of the little asteroids he was on had a Baobab tree on
Yeah.
it. And I just thought that was very interesting, and I love the metaphor that you use, which I'll let you speak to in your reading, but I just thought that was really neat. So
Could
I
Marula
managed.
be involved?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Yes. So there's Amarula Gin, and this is a drink called the Savannah Sunset,
Oh my
meant to
God.
be. This is a wonderful thing. Now, Amarula Gin is not so easy to find, and it's not so easy to hear the description of unless you happen to know the taste of the marula fruit, which, people are not necessarily forthcoming about the notes that it has and things like that. But I did find in our liquor cabinet a gin which I think may come close. So this is a Savannah Sunset, and we're going to start off with some ice in a shaker.
Chris, I must tell you,
And
you have blended these drinks to match the books beyond perfection.
I'm very glad. That to me is fantastic praise.
Because I was
So
curious, in the interim between meeting you and then getting in, figuring out how we'll do the show, I'm going, I wonder what he's going to come up with for the drinks. And you have done it beyond belief.
That is part of the fun of the program.
yes, indeed. So we start off with some an equivalent, hopefully an equivalent to Amarula Gin, and but which, by the way, they have a fantastic website. You just want to go visit there when you're taking a look at this wonderful product. But the next thing we're going to put in is a little bit of elderflower liqueur, which is a Saint Germain. This is going to be really quite a floral and fruity, wonderful taste. Perfect for, being steeped in that climate and things like that. So I've got some peach nectar, which I'm going to then add in as well. Then we're going to put in a little bit of lemon juice and a couple of dashes of Peychaud's bitters, if I can find them. There we go. And so we have this for shaking. So I've got everything in there so far. I'm going to shake that up, and then I'm going to get the glasses that I have here. Again, more kind of a highball glass. We'll throw some ice in. Alrighty, now that we have this, we're going to pour this into the glass, and then we're going to add a couple of other things to it before we're ready to go.
So this is what it looks like so far.
Oh my God.
Some, in this case, it's going to be some 7-Up. They said some soda water, but I wanted to just kind of give it a little bit of a sweeter flavor with the 7-Up. And then, to top
Here
it all
comes the
off,
crowning touch.
we get some fresh raspberries.
Oh.
Here we have our Savannah sunset, set in Africa next to the Baobab tree with
Cheers.
Amarula gin.
That one's nice.
I really like that.
Yeah.
That's got a fantastic flavor for a 90-degree, 95% humidity day.
Well, this one in particular is very heavy on the 7-Up. So I'm tasting a lot of that. I almost wouldn't realize there's alcohol in it, which is when drinks get dangerous. you
yes,
don't.
indeed.
It's easy to not realize how much you're drinking then. So, reading number 3.
Well, I have three great loves in life. Number one always is Paula, my wife, and the others begin with A, Alaska and Africa. So the latest book, I decided to go into the freeing writing of fiction, my first novel, and it's called A Long Way Home. And the summary I'll read right now. Once upon a time, very recently, a native African girl lived in a tree. Not just any tree. It was the mother of all trees, 2,000 years ancient, massive in girth, with bark like the wrinkled hide of an old elephant, and a canopy of limbs spiky and twisted. Legend has it that God did not like the baobab growing in his garden, so he plucked it out, threw it over the wall of paradise. It fell onto the earth below upside down and continued growing that way to this day. The girl lived inside a hollow in the giant tree, an outcast of her own choosing, with special gifts, including the ability to talk to the animals. One day, a troubled boy came to her from another world, and the girl, the tree, and Africa changed him forever. This is their story.
What inspired this book?
During the wintertime, when I'm not working with Princess Cruises in Alaska as the naturalist, I live on a cruise ship, $1 billion ship for 5 months. It's crazy, La Vida Loca. And then when I come home
That's
in the
great.
winter, Paula, my wife, is a flight attendant. And I had no idea when I first met her, she threw a t-shirt at me. It said, "Marry me, fly free." So if you marry someone in the airline industry, you have free tickets for life.
Yes.
And that's the most expensive part of travel is the airfare. So when you take
Right.
that away, it's marvelous. So we started a little company of our own, and we lead walking safaris in Tanzania and also South Africa. And I was fascinated, as Chris said earlier, about the baobab tree, not only from, the Little Prince, but seeing these monster trees on the savannah in Africa. And then one night in a dream, Binti, the African girl, came to me, and a lot of the baobabs have 3 or 4 huge rooms inside, from fire openings like a big redwood tree would. And there's actually bars that people have in South Africa. And I said, what if this girl ran away from her village for a reason, lived all alone in this tree? And what if you took the opposite of her world, and that would be a Hollywood actor that has anything he wants? Everybody's a yes man around him. He's, in his early 20s, and he's totally corrupted by fame. He's doing drugs and alcohol, doesn't know who he is inside, like Socrates said. And if you put those two together, what would she have to teach him? And, Laura, you probably experienced this when you're writing well, it's being written. It's coming through you like you're taking dictation. You jump out of bed in the morning and your characters are telling you what to write.
Yes.
Then the book is good.
I've often said that I didn't feel like I wrote these books. I almost felt like I was just telling what happened.
And, Borgia, I think he's Argentinian, the blind writer, he said, when the writing is good, it is a guided dream. And that's how this book came to be. So feel blessed.
Yeah.
Sounds wonderful.
Well, speaking of dreams, I have this, I'll have to write this book, but I don't know what this story is. I have this recurring dream where I've got this 3-story house, and it's long and it's narrow, and there's this 3rd story that I keep forgetting I have, which is particularly ironic because I have a whole bunch of kids who could use those bedrooms. And I dreamed about that again last night.
really?
It was, yeah, I'll have to try and remember what happened on the third floor this time.
Wow, that's a great story. You have to write it.
It's Yeah, it's fascinating because I've been having these dreams for years, and it's essentially the same house all the time, and it's
You
fascinating.
should set one of the Ivy League novels.
I
in
should,
there.
I should
We're writing this series of novels that are noir thriller novels.
parody.
Yeah,
Parody
parodies
noir.
essentially.
What
And
would the title
I
of that
fill
book
in-
be? Do you have a working title or?
We have a number of them actually already.
Not for the third floor.
Not for the third floor book, but some of the others that have very noirish titles to them. And
Wow.
I've studied that genre a lot, and I get to provide a lot of that that language into the book, and it's just fun.
Yeah. So what is it about Alaska and Africa that what do you think especially draws you to those two places?
Well, they're very different, obviously, climate-wise, geographical location, but they're very similar in that you have the purity of nature. You have native people with their society pretty much intact, although the Maasai do have cell phones now under their red blankets, you know. But it's just that primal experience where I'm not sure if it was D.H. Lawrence or maybe it was Emerson that advised us to be a good animal. Don't, as much as we live in our head and our intelligence, you can't lose that primal instinctual knowledge where you're thinking with your body, you know, and that has saved my life many, many times when I've been in dicey situations. The commands don't come from the brain, they almost come from my solar plexus. They come from that old oversoul that Emerson did talk about, that accumulated knowledge we all have. And when I'm in Africa, I feel 1,000% alive. And just like Alaska is the home of my soul, it's where I vibrate the highest.
I was curious if your book was based on any African myths or legends, but it sounds like it is completely from your imagination and your dream.
Yeah, and as you guys know, a character in your story is usually a composite of many people that you sort of blend together as one, you know. And so Binti became a composite of many, many wonderful native women that I was privileged to meet on safari. And, you know, I kind of put them all amalgamation into one character.
Where can people find you online?
I could talk to you guys for a lifetime, where I really
Well,
believe I have met kindred spirits.
where can people find you online?
My new book is at alongwayhomebook.com. And then my other books are available on Amazon.com.
Okay.
And there's a
And-
great trailer that's very cinematic that shows the book story on alongwayhomebook.com. I'm really proud of that because, you know, now we're in that visual age, and a lot of times you bring a book out, you want to have a mini movie to kind of summarize the plot.
Right.
And Africa is just so beautiful, and we were so fortunate to film there.
And I believe you have an author website, Michael Modzelewski.
Yeah,
Is that right?
.com.
Readers or listeners, I guess in this case, can find us
Our
at
8.9 million listeners.
yes, sorry. No, I thought we were up to 9 point something, so we're probably at 10 million now.
Oh, very good. That's awesome.
So our 10 million listeners can find us at booksandbrews.net. I am at lauravosica.com. You can find us and the ram who tried to kill me at glenmerrillfarms.wordpress.com. And you can find our sponsor at gabrielshornpress.com.
Do you have any events coming up, Michael?
Well, I'm about to leave to join the cruise ship next Friday. So we get people, we get 4,000 passengers every week for a 7-day cruise, round trip from Seattle. We go 1,000 miles north all the way to Glacier Bay and back down. And we get 30 countries every week from all over the world and all 50 states. So it's just amazing. And as a gig, as a writer, you're giving, you know, illustrated programs in the theater on a big screen, and then you have a table outside the theater with your books. And I just, you know, hand selling books now is kind of the way to go, back of the room. And I just sell and sign, you know, tons of books. They never go out of print because I've gotten the rights back from publishers. And it's just, I pinch myself. It's such a great gig for an author.
Laura,
So-
do we have any events coming up?
We have absolutely no public events, but anybody who wants to join me to clean out rabbit cages, you're absolutely welcome to do that. I will accept. I will allow you to spend your day with me cleaning out rabbit cages.
It's the essence of a naturalist experience here on the farm.
Right.
Everywhere you go, there's poop. That's all, we never knew this about farming, but now we do.
Yes.
And it'd be wonderful if you guys ever wanted to come back to Alaska to just shoot me an email. Let's keep in touch. And it'd be wonderful to share a ship
I will.
together,
That
That'd
would be
great.
wonderful. I very much appreciate that.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to go way out on a limb, way past the edge of the limb, into
falling
another
off.
national park, and ask. I'm thinking there's going to be another very interesting guest next month.
Yes, there is. So we will be talking next month with Clay Gilbert, and I seem to be attracting writers from Knoxville lately. So we've had dinner with a couple of our previous guests and their spouses, and now we'll have to add Clay Gilbert to the list.
We have very much a writers' club going
Right,
at
we
the
kind of
Bonefish
do.
Grill.
From
Yes.
the time Clay Gilbert knew there were people who told stories for a living, that's what he wanted to do. Clay's work in various genres has been in print since his first short science fiction story, The Computer Conspiracy, was published in Scholastic Magazine when he was just 13. His work is published by Dark Moon Press, and his 11th novel, Pearl, A Monster Story, was released in 2019. So he writes in a variety of genres. I think sci-fi is a big one for him. So excited to talk to him and meet another neighbor down here in